Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry, and welcome to the Aviator 3400 YouTube channel. I'm not going to call myself a vlogger because as a vlogger I pretty well suck at it. I only make a video every once in a great while, but hopefully, maybe going forward that'll change. I'm over here at the airport today. Let me get you out of the sun. Standing in front of the Mangy Fox here, and you can see we got her on the preheater. She's warming up, been going for a couple hours. We can talk about that here in a little bit, but today is December 22nd, and it's going to be an unusually beautiful day out here today. It's going to be like 40 degrees and a beautiful day to go for some airplane rides. So if you're interested, we're going to do a few things. You can fast forward to the flying part later on if you'd like. Enjoy. I'd ask, like it, subscribe if you can, tell a friend. If this isn't your thing, well, that's cool too. We'll see you around YouTube. Thanks. Cool. So this is the Mangy Fox. Mangy Fox is a classic 1200. She has been modified quite a bit by me when I did the rebuild on her. The kit was originally purchased back in the mid-90s and flew for the first time in the late 90s, I think 1999. I bought the airplane in 2008 and over several years tore her all apart, doing lots of modifications, as you can see on the tail there, and made her into the Mangy Fox that she is today. We have a lot of fun with her, and she's a great little airplane. So here we go. We'll do a little walk around and you can follow along, or you can fast forward to the flying parts if you'd like. So I guess what we'll look at here is first off my my preheating system that I've got. As you can see, it's a reclaimed work light stand attached to just a cheap little, I call it a cube heater or a ceramic heater, something like that. Walmart special, $5. Put it on the stand, blow it in the front of the cowl with my cover over the front, and it works good. Warms up the engine, warms up the ignition boxes, warms up the oil. She cranks over and starts a heck of a lot easier when you do that. What I've also done here on my system, hopefully one of these days, one of the neighbors is looking at putting in a Wi-Fi repeater out here, and I'll get a Wi-Fi switch to turn this off and on remotely. But I've got down here, where is it? There it is. Just a little T-box right there on my extension cord that runs the heater. And then what I do is, you can see maybe sitting on the seat there, to you, my, again, cheap little Walmart battery tender. I have that come on at the same time as the heater, and goes over here and runs off this timer. So last night I came over, set up the timer to come on and run for a couple hours since about 6 o'clock this morning. It's about 11 o'clock now, so it's been running for a few hours. Motor's real nice and warm, and the battery has gone from charge to maintain, so that's got a nice good charge on it now at this point. So what I'm going to do, we'll pull the cover off, the cowl, the big unveiling of the Mangy Fox on there, and we're going to get ready and go do a little flying here. We'll walk around. Maybe I'll take you with me if I can make that work. I'm going to put you on the tripod like this because I'm not good with the selfie stick. Like I said, I'm not a good vlogger. I had recently a little issue and had to replace the prop on the Mangy Fox. So the Mangy now has this nice pretty NR Luga prop. Comes with these dandy covers. And I'm still working on my phase 1 fly off. I had to do about 5 hours of phase 1 fly off. I've got another hour and a half to do on that yet, so we're just going to play around the airport here today and do some more testing with it and catch some numbers on climb out and so on. One thing I do want to go in here close, if you look, you can see the spinner on the front, the prop hub, I did have to add that spacer, and then that black disc in the back is a Balance Master balance ring. And I got the prop and the spacer and everything from Hal Stockman, Zipper Big Bore man. Great guy. And he said, why don't you try one of these and see what you think? And I said, yeah, sure, because I had seen those on Spruce. Just adjust you there a little bit. And I was intrigued by that. I was going to put one behind my old prop, which was a Prince prop, fixed pitch wood core prop. And unfortunately managed to, shall we say, modify that prop a little bit one afternoon. Let's see about throwing a photo up here of that. And yeah, so I got one of these Balance Master rings from Hal at the same time as I got this prop, and I'll tell you, at this moment right now, I am a big fan. This prop with the ring on there, compared to the very short ferry flight I brought the airplane home with before I had it, much smoother than it ever was with the Prince on it. And I know Lonnie Prince does a real good job balancing those props. 912 is notorious for having a little rough patch, usually between 2500 and 3500 RPM. Almost all of them have that. With this balance ring, that rough patch is almost a non-event now. Again, like I said, big fan. Really liking this thing a lot. So what I'm going to do here is my normal walk around and just make some adjustments on the airplane and check some things. Look at the doors, look at my leading edges. On the wings, on the jury struts here, I always like to give those a little shake and check that hardware is on there good. Of course, the lift struts, give everything just a little bit of a tug. And I'll look, make sure my lights are on. Still snug, nothing's going to rattle or vibrate. Always check the flapper-on brackets along here. Look at the hardware. They're nylock nuts that go from the brackets up here to the flapper-on hangers. And I always look and see that those haven't backed out or moved or anything strange. Give it a little motion here. Look at the empennage part of the fuselage. Everything looks nice. Again, the lift struts on the tail. Make sure the hardware looks good on those. Cycle the elevator a couple of times, and if you give it a little jiggle and you look down in there, you can see what everybody calls the Jesus bolt. There's one bolt on the elevator horn that if you lose it, you've got no elevator. And that can really pretty well ruin your day. So you always want to look at that on every pre-flight. Look on this side of the elevator, check my hinge pins. Elevator strut on this side, a horizontal stabilizer strut, I guess would be a better word. Check the vertical fin. Antennas are nice and solid on there. Probably can't see me anymore, but I'm looking at the flapper on and the hangers on this side. Off the wing, again the wingtip, the light on the wingtip. Everything looks good. Hardware on the lift struts is good and tight. The jury strut is tight. Door on the passenger side looks good. I will at this time take out my battery maintainer off the seat. Won't need that anymore. And a quick walk around of the fuselage and the airframe is good. Now we'll do a little more looking. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. When we did the cowling on this airplane, I put a little hood latch up here, so we got a little cover. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a little cover up here where the oil reservoir is, and I can get to the cap and the dipstick up in here. Now, she's nice and warm from having that preheater on it for several hours here. So what I'm going to do is we'll go back in here after the cap and take him off so we can hear it. And I'm going to pull the motor through a few rotations and see if we can get it to burp for us, and you can see what the 912 burp is all about. I'm going to rotate the engine through relatively slowly because the crankcase pressure is what pushes the oil back to the sump. And that's what you're hearing. The burp is that little bit of expelling air from the crankcase. So we're pulling through here a little bit. Excuse me for being a little awkward with this. I've got kind of a bum shoulder at the moment, so this is a one-handed deal. Hear it moving some oil, and it should burp here pretty soon, just like that. Hope you guys can hear that. Kind of a bit of an obnoxious noise that she makes, but a burp is a good description of the noise. So then I can pull the dipstick out, and it's right where I want it to be, and because I'm short and I can't see it, I put the dipstick back in by feel. There it is. Put the cap back on, and we are pretty good. Oil level looks nice. The engine has been pulled through several times, so I know she's not hydrolocked. So theoretically, she'd be ready to start up and start warming up. Now, some of you guys might be interested in this, and some maybe not. If you're not, go ahead and fast forward, or don't, or whatever you'd like to do. I know there's probably only 2 people watching this anyway, so, but anyhow, I'm going to explain here. One of the modifications I did to the Mangy Fox here from the standard classic 1200 Kitfox Model 4 is I kind of reworked the whole rudder and vertical fin assembly. I wanted some more rudder and elevator authority. I'll move the camera here in a little bit and show you what I did with the elevator. I wanted some more slow speed authority than what was in the original design of the airplane. I know the later model 567s, they had larger and larger tails on them, and they've kind of accomplished this already, but I wanted to do something a little different, make the airplane a little unique to me. I did a lot of homework on this. I did a lot of design study on it, and a little shooting from the hip and a little bit of luck. But we came out with a really nice tail design that works really well, achieved all of my design goals. The original tail came up, and the leading edge here is original. The original tail came up to this point and actually curved and came back about halfway up the balance that you see here, and then came back around with the P-51 looking style tail that Dan Denny loved so much on these airplanes, and still with them kind of today. I wanted a little more surface area to the rudder, and because I've got the square Hornier style wingtips on it, I thought the tail would look a little better if it was a little more squared off. I didn't want to completely look like a Highlander, but it sort of does. Honestly, it looks a little more to me like a Rans S7 style tail, but those are also very good airplanes, really well-performing airplanes, and I'm not shy about stealing some design ideas from them. So what I did was we did this aerodynamic balance about 6 inches tall over the top of where, like I said, originally this started to curve right here. I cut that off there. We welded a tube in here. We did some more up front there I'll talk about in just a second. But then just to even this off with 6-inch aerodynamic balance up here, overall length on this part here, probably about 10 inches or so. Then squared this off, extended back the rudder a little bit, because we could do that with the balance up here giving us a little more authority on it. Works really, really nice. We get lots of rudder authority at lower speeds. Real pleased with the modification, and it makes the airplane look a little bit unique. Up in the front of all of this, I did add, I guess you could call it a razorback or a ventral fin. Is that what it is? No, a dorsal fin. Ventral would be underneath. We added this fixed part of the fin in, again, to give a little more yaw stability, some vertical surface area on the tail. Again, I'm real happy with this. It has gotten rid of the earlier Kitfoxes had what they called some yaw, not yaw instability, but they wouldn't return to center, and you had to kind of be happy feet all the time with them to keep the ball in the middle. Adding some more vertical surface area, some fixed fin area, and the larger rudder and so on did help with that on this airplane quite a bit. This airplane is very yaw stable. It does center itself much better than a standard Model 4 does. And overall, I've been been real pleased with that modification. Would I do it again? Yeah, probably, if I were building another one of these. I've been real pleased with it. It suits my style and my needs real well. On the elevator, I did a real similar modification. Again, the leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer here came to this point and then started to curve back around to the regular curved shape that they have. I cut it off here at the end of that curve, squared it off, added again about a 6-inch balance on here, and it extended the chord of the elevator quite a bit. In designing this, I took a lot of measurements and did a lot of design study of many different airplanes. Cubs, Tri-Pacers, had a friend of mine with a Highlander, took lots of measurements off of his airplane. Another friend of mine with an S7 Rams took lots of measurements off of that airplane. S6 Rams. I did lots of design study of surface area, of movable surface to fixed surface, and how that laid out, and lots of number crunching and so on before this wasn't just completely seat of the pants. The final design shape was a little bit, but there was some science behind it, so not just completely off the cuff. Again, the elevator works really, really well. I have lots of elevator authority with no additional throw. It still has the factory amount of throw, and I don't recall the degrees each direction, but did not modify the horn in here. There is still from this side to the other side an ever so slight offset to the two sides to counteract the torque of the engine and so on. I left that in there. That also helps with some flutter and things like that, which I've never experienced any flutter with this airplane. I have tested it up to 145 miles an hour, which is the VNE for the classic 41200. No issues with flutter. Been real stable, real happy with the airplane. One thing, we'll see if we can do this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not with the sun glare, but I did also on this side put a elevator trim tab in here. The Model 4s, for the most part, all trim with the flapper-ons. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that, again, because of that Jesus bolt in there. If you lose that Jesus bolt, you no longer have any elevator control. With the trim tab on here, I have played with it a little bit. You do maintain some modicum of control, and I like to think that I could at least have somewhat of a controlled crash if I lose that bolt. But again, that's why I always check that on the pre-flight. In here, where we're going here now, you can see on the flap control, which is this right here, I did make a gate on here so it has notches now instead of just infinitely adjustable for trim control. So because I have the trim tab on there, I can utilize notches of flaps, and this is fully retracted. One notch what I use for takeoff when I'm heavy, 2 notches for standard landings, and a 3rd notch is really, honestly, it's an excessive amount of flapper on travel. I can slow the airplane down quite a bit and do that, but that is for only extremely calm winds, because the flapper-ons will stall going into that 3rd notch. So I will get into what they call inversion, where your controls reverse and it gets really scary. So that's the Mangy Fox. That's a bit of a walk around. I did some more things that I didn't really show on camera. I did some more inspections on the engine, checked my coolant levels, things like that. Like I said, I have been working with testing on the new prop and so on. So I've been checking every flight. I pulled a magnetic plug out of the gearbox because of the prop strike I had earlier. Been checking on that. The airplane is going in for condition inspection here in a couple of weeks, so I am planning on pulling the whole gearbox off and really going through it again. At this point, I haven't found any metal or anything on the gearbox, and the oil was clean, so I'm not real concerned with it, but I do want to give it a good once over here before I go too far with the airplane. I've just been hanging around the airport doing pattern work and flying off my 5 hours of phase 1. here for the new prop. So what I'm planning on doing here now, if you want to come along, is I'm going to hook up my other cameras in the cockpit here, and we'll put things together, and we'll go for a little airplane ride and ride around the pattern here a few times and have some fun and just enjoy this beautiful day out here. So here is my cold engine starting procedure. I'm going to explain it here with the engine off and not going to crank or anything. I don't know if I want to have my electronics all turned on when I'm cranking the engine and getting it started here, so I'll explain it first and shut you off and you can watch me do it. What I am going to do is I've got my master turned on right now and the avionics turned on so you can hear my voice over here. I'm going to turn on the fuel pump, pull the enricher circuit. With the ignitions off, I will crank the engine over a little bit to prime some fuel up into it. Since the engine is preheated and pretty well summertime warm temperature.
Cherokee 1462 Tango, crossing runway 1634, Merrill.
I will then let the enricher go back to off position. I will engage the starter and get the engine turning, then turn the ignitions on. The reason why I do this is there's always concern with kickback on these engines. This is a cold weather starting procedure that I've discovered, and maybe some other folks are doing it this way, that really cuts back on any potential kickback. I have had some kickback issues with this engine, especially in the cold weather. This is a big bore engine, and I have basically still the 80 horsepower starter on it yet, so it's not the big heavy duty starter on here. So it doesn't really whip this engine as fast as it should to start in a normal procedure, but that's the technique that I use. So here we go. I'm going to shut off the audio here so I can go through this procedure and you can watch along with me. Okay, everybody back with me? One of the things that I wanted to point out, after the engine started, you saw me point at my dynon here, that is the soft start modules on the ignitions. They go from a 0 advance to the standard advance, which I'm not even sure how many degrees of advance timing that is. And they're a little different from one flywheel to the next, but at that point you could hear the engine change its pitch just a little bit as the ignition advanced to its normal run position and smoothed out a little bit. With all of that going together in that procedure, I have not had any issues with kickback on starting this engine, and it works really nice. Of course, if you have the left-right both start switch here, you cannot do that. And again, that's another reason why I'm not a fan, nor is Leaf or Lockwood or any of the Rotex trained folks a fan of that left-right both ignition switch. They're not designed for these CDI's ignitions. They're designed for magnetos on certificated type engines. And this type of setup is just better. Allows you to crank the engine with the ignitions off, to bring oil pressure up after an oil change, to do all kinds of different things you can do with this type setup with independent ignition switches from an independent start switch. Now, I have a start button here. This switch here, you could easily get an off-on start switch if you like. I'm strange. I like having the button. So right now we've got, the engine is up and running, and it is bringing the oil temperature up right now. Not sure if you can see on the screen, but we've got 85 degrees of oil temperature at the moment. So she's pretty happy, but we're going to stay right here and let her idle at least until I get 100 degrees of oil temperature before I'll taxi out and start getting it to position and doing a run up or anything like that.
Going to set my barometer setting. Field elevation here is 1,320 feet. So I will put that in. Cylinder head temps right now, we're at 117 on one side, 108 on the other. My coolant temperature, I do have a separate coolant temperature probe. I am up to 100 degrees on coolant temperature already, and almost 90 degrees already on oil temperature. So that preheating does help a lot in starting the engine and making it work a little better. Work a little easier, we should say. Maybe while we're waiting for things to warm up here a little bit, what I can do is I can tell you a little about the panel I've got on the Mangy Fox here. I have got over here on this side, this is a Dynon D180 flight deck, which is a engine monitor and flight instrument all in one box. Now this is kind of old technology, and the newer Garmin units and the newer Dynon units are much more advanced than this, but they are also considerably more expensive too. This was a bit of a budget build when I put this airplane together. It was expensive nevertheless, but I didn't want to put, you know, they're talking $10,000, $12,000 by the time you put the synthetic vision systems in and all of the other fancy stuff that's available now. I just didn't want to involve that much money. So the Dynon D180 does everything that I want it to do. It gives me full flight instrumentation on here. It does all of the engine management monitoring that I would want. And separate from that, I have a Garmin Model 500 era touchscreen GPS, which I've had for several years here. I had it in my previous airplane. Really like that unit. ICOM A210 comm radio with a flip-flop in it. And then a Garmin 327 GTX transponder altitude encoding. That's a mode C. I do not have the in and out positioning systems on here yet. It escapes me right now the moment what that's called. At some point in time in the future, I guess I will probably have to do that. Right now where I live, we're not in any type of airspace that requires it, or near any type of airspace that requires it. So I am not planning on doing that in the near future. When that time comes, very similar to what Alex did in the Red Fox, I will probably use that system that replaces the wingtip lights. With one side is the ADS-B, that's what I'm trying to think of. The ADS-B out is on one side, the ADS-B in is on the other, and then on this RAM mount here, I normally, for cross countries and so on, I'll put my iPad on there. I use Garmin Pilot. Again, that's a personal preference. That will Bluetooth to the unit to display traffic warnings and all that kind of stuff. So I'm blathering a little bit here, but in the meantime, we have gained up to, we're at 110 degrees of oil temperature, so I'm going to throttle up here, and we're just going to taxi away from the hangar at the moment. I'm just checking free play of my control surfaces, and everything is good. We'll taxi out onto the ramp and continue letting things warm up. I don't like to do anything too crazy until I have 120 degrees worth of oil temperature. I'm at 112 right now, so we're almost there. What you just saw me turn on heat, I put a small coolant radiator underneath the panel here with two computer fans on it. That's my cabin heat. Stays comfortable in here. Strobe lights on the wingtips. The airplane originally had a set of Wheeling.
Mail traffic, Cherokee 1462 Tango, departing 25, Merrill.
Had a set of Wheeling wingtip strobes and navigation light combination units. I still have those on here. Like I said, eventually I'll do that ADS-B thing, which replaces that all with LED stuff. So I've still got those. And then landing lights, right here is this switch. I have a set of LED ATV style LED lights in my wingtips out there that I have through the crazy pilot controller thing, and I have it set up for a wig wag and a strobe strobing setup on that. They don't work real great as landing lights, but they do work very well as recognition lights. You can see them for a long ways off. And that's kind of my primary goal for those. So we are up to 125 degrees worth of oil temperature. So we're about ready to start. I could do some run up and so on. What I'm doing here now is I'm just clearing the track log out of the GPS. And I'm going to taxi from the ramp over here to the end of the runway where I can do a run up.
Merrill traffic, yellow Kitfox 826 Delta Mike on the ramp for runway 25, Merrill.
130 degrees of oil temperature, so I have no problem doing a run up here at this point. We'll take the engine up to 4,000 RPM. I do ignition A first, then ignition B. Both of those are only dropping about 50 RPM. I'll switch page and look at my engine instruments here. Coolant temperature, fuel pressure, fuel flow. Everything looks good on that page. Back here, oil pressure, oil temperature, EGTs, cylinder head temperatures, all looking real nice. Engine feels and sounds and smells and tastes pretty nice this morning. We're going to have a runner here today where we'll do a little flying. I'm going to circle back around here. We're sharing the pattern today with a Cherokee. I believe she's going to be staying in the pattern here. And after a little while, a friend of mine with his Avid is going to probably join us out here on the pattern too. Looking out to the landing threshold portion to see if anybody out there without a radio coming in. I don't see anybody. So we're going to take to the skies here.
Merrill traffic, yellow Kitfox 826 Delta Mike, departing runway 25, close left traffic, Merrill.
And Larry, we're going to be in the pattern too. We're going to be doing some short and takeoffs and landings. We'll try to stay 180 from you.
No problem, we'll keep an eye on you.
Right now I can tell you a little about the performance I'm seeing on this prop. I'm turning 5,500 RPM with my current pitch setting, and I'm getting today about 1,500 feet per minute sustained climb at a 60 mile an hour best rate climb. And what's really fun with this airplane, before I even reach the end of the runway, I have reached 1,000 feet AGL of pattern altitude. She is a performer. I like this airplane. And I'm learning to like this Luga prop even more. Two cameras recording. Okay, let's try max takeoff. Max performance takeoff. We're right at a runway marker. We'll take it up to full power. Release the brakes, lift the tail. There's 40 miles an hour, 2 notches of flaps, and pull it about 175 feet. I'm not going to complain about this propeller. Climbing out 55 miles an hour, 1,200 feet per minute climb.
Traffic, Sundowner 793 Yankee, turning on left downwind for 25 at Merrill.
Yep, not going to complain. And there we are, back where we started from.